The 17 News at Sunrise podcast is brought to you by Clinica Sierra Vista.
Welcome back to the 17 News at Sunrise podcast, where we share your news on your schedule.
Working in the spirit of the Golden Empire, this is 17 News at Sunrise.
Well, good morning.
Thanks for waking up with us. I'm Maddie Jansen alongside Elena Russ. A man's in custody after shots were fired at a Walmart neighborhood market in Oildale. According to the Kern County Sheriff's Office, no one was hurt in the shooting that forced the evacuation of the Walmart and a lockdown of the store last night. Initial reports suggest two people got into a fight in the parking lot and it then continued inside. Reports from the scene suggest that shots were fired inside and outside the store, though the number of shots is unclear at this time. Deputies confirm they retrieved a firearm during the arrest. The second person was briefly detained by deputies and then released. Meantime, two people have died after a drive-by shooting in Delano, just north of County Line Road. Tulare County Sheriff's deputies were on scene just after 4 p.m. One person had died by the time deputies arrived. Three more victims later showed up at the Delano Police Department, where two people were airlifted to the hospital. One of those victims died. The investigation's ongoing. Anyone with information is urged to call the Tulare County Sheriff's Department at 559-733-6218.
All right, well, tonight, another local school district will put the discussion forward about the dangers of the deadly synthetic opioid fentanyl, making it center stage of their meeting. The Panama Buena Vista Union School District discussing the use of Narcan on campus. The policy expected to outline who can carry the opioid overdose reversal spray on school grounds. According to a district spokeswoman, that is not likely to include students. Deaths and overdoses due to fentanyl have skyrocketed over the past few years across the country and right here at home, with 17 News recently learning of several overdoses on local high school campuses just since the school year began in August. Kern High School District reported officials had used Narcan on its campuses at least 5 times this school year. Now, Kern County fentanyl deaths stand at 162 from New Year's Day through the end of September. That puts Kern County on track to reach a potential total of about 218 fentanyl deaths for 2022. That would be a 6% decrease from last year's total of 232, but it's still substantially higher than 2020's count of 139 deaths.
Longtime Bakersfield philanthropist Peggy Cole Darling has died just 6 weeks shy of her 95th birthday. Jim Darling tells 17 News his stepmother died at her home yesterday afternoon. Peggy Darling, a Los Angeles native and widow of longtime Bakersfield attorney Curtis Darling, was instrumental in the renovation and rebirth of the Fox Theater. Most recently, she donated a building adjacent to the Fox to the Bakersfield Firefighters Association for a firefighters museum. 17 News will have much more on the passing of Peggy Darling this evening.
All right, and now to your 17 Court Watch. The trial against Wendy Howard is entering its 6th day today. Yesterday, former Tehachapi Police Sergeant Amelia Thompson testified over Zoom, saying Howard told her she wanted to handle the situation herself when she learned her ex had been molesting her teenage daughter. Thompson says she warned Howard there were serious consequences for taking the law into her own hands. Prosecutors say Howard ignored that advice, and when Pitts came by 3 days later, she confronted and fatally shot him. Howard has said she fired in self-defense as Pitts tried to run her down on an ATV, but prosecutors say he wasn't facing her when the shots were fired and therefore posed no threat. Thompson told the defense Howard's statement of wanting to handle the situation herself was never recorded.
Bakersfield police were asking for your help finding a missing at-risk man. This is a picture of Tyler Sharnick. He was last seen yesterday on Camp Street near South H and Fairview Road in South Bakersfield. He's described as white, 5 foot 10 inches tall with black hair and blue eyes, and he is considered at risk due to a medical condition. If you know anything about where Tyler may be, contact BPD at 327-7111.
All right, well, you may have noticed some out-of-town ambulances driving around Kern County, and that's because Hall Ambulance is contracting with other companies to help keep up with an ongoing surge in calls for help. 17's Marco Torres looked into it.
COVID-19 had a devastating effect on our frontline workers in the medical field.
COVID-19 hit between 2020 and today. We have seen a mass exodus of employees, of staff.
Hall Ambulance has been working to fill the gaps with an academy that offers a 10-week course for EMT training to anyone with a high school diploma, but it's not enough.
We had over 500 applicants that applied for the program. Unfortunately, many wash out, and less than 20 will likely be starting in. That's primarily due to they're unable to pass the math and English tests as part of the assessment.
Hall offers higher pay to its medical staff than the average company in California. Newly licensed paramedics start at $61,000 a year. Mark Coram says that's $12,000 more than the state average. But even with higher pay, Hall still doesn't have enough workers.
We are paying out of our own pocket, for additional staffing resources. We've contracted with a local industrial safety company that has EMS workers, and then we've retained a couple of Los Angeles and Orange County ambulance companies to provide additional ambulance and personnel here to run calls.
That it's not just Kern County, that this is affecting everybody in the state and it's affecting the nation. California is down somewhere around 7,000 paramedics. Nationally, we're down somewhere around 21,000 paramedics.
Well, Marco Torres reporting there. Hall is asking everyone to only call 911 if it is a real medical emergency. 17 News is your local election headquarters. With the midterm elections just 28 days away, if you're registered to vote in California, your ballot is now in the mail. Yesterday was the deadline for election officials to send out those ballots to all active registered voters in the state. 17's Capitol correspondent Aiton Wallace looks at some of the key issues at stake in this election.
Now that ballots are going out, voters will have a lot to consider, from abortion rights to candidates for governor to control of Congress. Printed, sent out, and carried right to your mailbox. Ballots are officially on their way, and election season is in full swing.
The stakes are high.
High stakes, says Professor Mindy Romero. She's the director of the Center for Inclusive Democracy at the University of Southern California. Romero notes California voters will likely play a huge role in determining which political party takes the majority of the U.S. House of Representatives.
The battle for control of Congress has always gone through California. We have the largest number of congressional districts and consistently have a large number, comparatively speaking, of competitive districts.
Nationwide, the GOP needs to pick up just 5 seats to take back the House, meaning if even a handful of competitive districts in California go red, that could impact the makeup of Congress.
Because we are overall a blue state, people think of us as kind of a done deal, but when it comes to the battle for control of Congress, California is definitely in play.
But not in play, she says, a serious race for governor between incumbent Democrat Gavin Newsom and Republican State Senator Brian Dahle. All major polls show Newsom leading by at least 20 points.
I'm up and down the states, and so I take nothing ever for granted.
He doesn't get results. Californians deserve better, and Gavin Newsom is a failure.
Front and center before voters, major ballot measures, including Props 26 and 27, each seeking to allow sports betting in the state.
If one of the propositions passes, you will see sports betting in some form, retail or online, in California in 2023.
Prop 26 calls for in-person sports betting on some tribal lands and select horse racing tracks, while the dueling Prop 27 calls for the legalization of online sports betting. Another proposition getting a lot of attention, Prop 1. In this post-Roe v. Wade society, the measure seeks to enshrine abortion and contraception rights into the California Constitution.
Will it be a factor in November? I think in some races it could. And it is explicitly being pulled into those races right for that purpose of advantaging one candidate or another.
And later this week, we plan to bring you an in-depth look at Prop 1, what supporters and opponents say about the measure. Reporting here outside the California State Capitol, Aiton Wallace, 17 News.
All right, well, in a special edition of 17 News at 5 last night, we went through concerns about election integrity expressed by voters, talking to residents, election officials, and investigating Kern's election systems on our own. Now, you can see that special by 17's Alex Fisher and Maddie Gannon on our website, kgt.com. Just scroll down and click on the banner that says Your Local Election Headquarters.
Meantime, this week we'd hoped to bring you a debate between Rudy Salas and David Valadao, the candidates for California's hotly contested 22nd Congressional District this week. Unfortunately, that won't be happening. Rudy Salas is pulled out of the debate, citing an advertisement attacking him for raising prescription drug prices. Salas says the ad is misleading. Valadao fired at Salas on Twitter, saying if he can't show up to vote and can't show up to debate, How are we supposed to believe he'll show up for the Central Valley in Congress? Instead of the back and forth of the debate as we had planned, tune in Wednesday at 7 for a half-hour conversation with Congressman Valadao. And by the way, our invitation to Mr. Salas remains open. Making news around the world this morning, President Biden and G7 leaders will have a virtual meeting to discuss Russia's ongoing war against Ukraine. This after Russian forces unleashed a barrage of missiles on several Ukrainian cities, killing at least 11 people. NBC's Bree Jackson is in Washington.
Russia launching its biggest missile attack in months, unleashing 84 rockets and 24 drones on Ukraine, smashing civilian targets, including a children's playground. The United Nations condemning the violence during an emergency session.
The entire world has once again seen the true face of the terrorist state that kills our people.
To show solidarity with Ukraine, protests are taking place across the U.S. Delivering his nightly address amid the rubble in Kyiv, Ukraine's president says Russia is trying to wipe us off the face of the earth. He's addressing G7 leaders on the situation this morning. Russian President Vladimir Putin says the attack is in retaliation for a bridge explosion that damaged a critical supply route. Ukraine has not publicly taken responsibility for the blast, but it serves as another devastating blow to Putin's war. Thousands are fleeing Russia to avoid a recent draft.
Putin feels as though his efforts are failing. And in so many ways they are. And in particular, the ground war is going badly against him at this point.
More than 7 months into the war, and Ukraine is not backing down, instead urging allies to continue to provide military support.
To protect Ukrainian civilians and prevent more attacks on critical infrastructure, there has to be strong response from the West.
President Biden promising advanced air defense systems to Ukraine and pledging to hold Russia accountable for its aggression. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin travels to Brussels today. While there, he'll meet with NATO officials and host a meeting of about 50 nations working to provide aid to Ukraine. In Washington, I'm Bree Jackson for NBC News.
And now to some developing news that we're following. Deep divisions forming within Los Angeles City Hall. Yuri Martinez, the president of the LA City Council, has resigned her leadership post after she was heard making racist remarks in audio that was leaked out over the weekend. One comment involved a 2017 MLK parade where Councilman Mike Bonin was in attendance with his husband and adopted black son on a float.
It's like the oddest thing, it's like black and brown on this float. The kid is bouncing off the effing walls on the float, practically tipping it over. There's nothing you can do to control him. Parece changuito.
That Spanish translation is Martinez referring to Bonin's black child as a monkey. In a statement announcing her resignation effective immediately yesterday, Martinez said in part, "As someone who believes deeply in the empowerment of the communities of color, I recognize my comments undercut that goal."
The 17 News at Sunrise podcast is a production of KGET and Nexstar Media Group. For more on all of the headlines in today's show, head to kget.com.